Okay.
Got it.
So we're on the journey out of Egypt. Hashem leads Bnei Israel. BNY stands for Bnei Israel, the children of Israel, on a circuitous route because he didn't want us to find the journey too easy to go back to Egypt. So we're going to go on a roundabout way. And we're going to see from the explanations that this is not just geographically roundabout, but our headspace had to go through a long walk to Friedman, because if we were going to take the shortcut, it would be easy to go back. So we would just flip in and we could flip back. So there was a process that lay ahead. So Hashem didn't want us to come to the first challenge and then want to start going back. So he led us with a pillar of cloud at daytime, pillar of fire at night, very indicative. When it's dark, we should realize that there is a fire that can be lit. When things are difficult, we should be optimistic as well. And when things are in the midst of the daytime, remember the clouds, so don't get carried away. But that is how Hashem led us. Then Hashem tells us something incredible. Go back towards Egypt, towards the Red Sea, and towards Egypt, so that you will appear to be hopelessly lost. And that would pump up the confidence of Pharaoh, as exactly it did. Bnei Israel panicked as the Egyptian army, which Pharaoh says, look, they lost in the desert. They don't know which way to go. So now we can chase after them and we can recapture them as our slaves. Jewish people are absolutely overwhelmed by the sight of an army coming forward to them. And Moshe Rabbeinu reassures them, and we'll come back to this point, how he reassures them. Don't be afraid, stand firm, Hashem will fight for you, remain silent. There were actually 4 responses from Moshe to the Jewish people. Then Hashem says to Moshe, speak to the Jewish people that they should travel forward. They should just go. But there was a sea in front of them. Yeah, just go. That's the direction you have to go. Now it's time to travel. Nobody wants to travel. It took an individual, as we'll soon see. The pillar of cloud moves to their rear. Normally the cloud was leading them, but now it moves to the back so it would protect them from the Egyptian camp that was coming towards them. It left the Egyptian camp in total darkness, and the Jewish people were in the light of day. This had happened before during the plague of darkness in Egypt. Then Moshe Rabbeinu split the sea with his stick. We'll read in the commentaries it first took a Nachshon ben Aminadav to jump into the water when everybody else was afraid, and that in fact opened up the waters for everybody else. We'll come back to that point. Bnei Israel walked on the seabed, everything was dry for them, and the rest of the sea was as walls on either side of them. Then Moshe Rabbeinu causes the walls to come tumbling down onto the pursuing Egyptians, destroying the whole Egyptian army. We then sang a song. Moshe Rabbeinu led us in song. Az Yashir Moshe u'Bnei Israel, praising Hashem for the wondrous miracle that had transpired. And then Miriam came out. She upped the antics. She took it one step higher by including not only the song, but by singing with musical accompaniment. We'll come back to that point too. She used a musical instrument, the tambourines, to accompany the song. Then this is the crossing of the sea, which I'm saying in a few minutes, but it's quite a big episode and quite a long song, which we sing and we read every day in our davening, as Yashir Moshe, the song of the crossing of the sea. And then we traveled 3 days, there was no water. Moshe Rabbeinu, we complained. Moshe Rabbeinu said, throw the branch of the bitter tree into the water, and the water which was bitter became sweet. And then a month goes by and the provisions run dry, and Israel complaining again. And believe it or not, they're saying, we want to go back to Egypt. Egypt was better than the desert. We want to go back to Egypt. Hashem promises to rain down a special miraculous bread. It was called manna, the mon, which would come every morning. And at night, he was going to give them quail, which was fleishiks. They were going to have fleishiks at night, meat meals at night, and they would have the quail in the morning. And then Hashem says, when it comes to the manna that's going to be given, it's only 1 omer that's going to be given for each member of the household. Nobody will have more, nobody will have less. You cannot store from one day to the other. Those people who did found that they'd become worm infested. It actually didn't keep from one day to another. They only had for the day. There was no savings. And then, equipped with the Egyptian valuables and provisions on the way, they took their sorry, this is actually still a continuation of the previous Parsha. So right at the end of the Parsha, we were given a few of the laws at Marah, which included the laws of Shabbos and other laws which we'll come to in the messages that we're going to take from here. So basically, this Shabbos talks about the final stage of the Exodus. We had geographically left Egypt. We had left the Egyptians behind us, but we needed to go through a process that would be the point of no return. And there were a number of details in the storyline that we're going to unfold that take us to the point of no return, that there was no going back. Something happened in the way we were thinking as free people, that we were no longer thinking as slaves. Very briefly, the children of Israel described that they went out chamushim, which literally could mean armed. They went out armed, but look at the word chamushim has the hidden word chamishi or chamesh, which means a fifth. So Rashi actually says that only a fifth of the Jewish people went out of Egypt because 4/5 remained in Egypt. They didn't want to go. They didn't want to leave. We heard about them last week, that they were buried during the darkness, the plague of darkness. But interesting that whilst they were so close to the emancipation and to the freedom, there were those that chose to cling on to what they had. They could not engage with freedom. And another country which is found in the Midrash is actually the same word chamesh, but the other way around. That Rabbi Yeshua interprets that 5-fold they came out of Egypt. In addition to the amount of people there were 4 parts, 4 times as many people, a total 5, like 400% increase of people that attached themselves to the Jewish people that were known as the Erev Rav. And they were salvaged from Egypt. 2 totally different commentaries playing on the word chamesh, chamushim, whether it was a fifth or whether it was, in fact, 4 times the amount of the Jewish people attaching themselves. Now, moving on to a word that is used when Bnei Israel lifted up their eyes and they see that, behold, the Egyptians were traveling. But it doesn't say were traveling, which in Hebrew, the verb is either in the plural or the singular. It says, behold, the Egyptians was, Nosea, which is in the singular, was traveling after them. Rashi quotes and says they were traveling as one man. And the verb is in the singular because they were like one heart, like one man. So the verb is used in the singular, the Hebrew singular verb, because they came as a singular person, completely united, like one heart, like one man. Just to juxtaposition that to something that we're engaging next week when we're standing at Sinai and receiving the Torah, there the singular verb is used relating to the Jewish people, lahavdil. It says that Vayichan Sham Yisrael neged Ahar, and Bnei Israel encamped, and the word encamped is used in the singular as well. And there again, the Rashi quotes the Midrash that says, Ke'ish echad b'lev echad, like one man with one heart. But the Avnei Nezer, take a look at how important language is. He says, look at the red and look at the blue. Relating to the Egyptians, when the singular verb is used to describe the Egyptian army coming after the Jewish people, there the explanation is like one heart, like one man. But when the singular verb is used relating to the Jewish people encamped by the mountain to receive the Torah, again we use a similar concept, but look how the words are turned around. Not like one heart, like one man, but there the wording is like one man with one heart. And the Avnei Nezer, one of the Hasidic commentaries, says that it is very, very relevant because like one heart, like one man, means they became one. They became a unit because they had a common heart. There was a common interest. It often happens in politics. You have like goals, you have a common ambition, and that forms people who are actually disparate and separate to become like one because they have a heart, they have a passion that they share. Look at the enemies of Israel over the many wars that we've had to encounter, the unity that was found between Syria and Egypt and Jordan, the Six-Day War, and Iraq and Lebanon, and all of the enemies around us were united. But what was the key to their unity? They were like one heart, a heart of hatred, and a desire to destroy Israel. And that passion, common passion, bound them together to become like one. They weren't essentially one. They were one to the degree that they had a common purpose. And in politics, often your enemy's enemy is your enemy, and you have different bedfellows based on common passion. When it came to the unity of the Jewish people, says the Avnei Nezer, it's very specific. It says they were like one man with one heart. Our unity is founded on the fact that we are essentially one. We are like one being because we are one people. And then the challenge is to ensure that as one people, we also have one heart, that we desire the same thing. But it's not the common desire that makes us one. We are essentially one. And the challenge is that we have like one heart. And when they were at Sinai, they did. They had Keish Echad B'Lev Echad. Now I want to go through the 4 different responses that Moshe Rabbeinu gives the Jewish people in a very interesting midrash that says that the Jewish people split into 4 different camps. Hashem said to Moshe, why cry to me? Speak to the Jewish people, they should go forward. But in that whole discussion, Moshe Rabbeinu says, fear not, stand by and see the salvation of God. Secondly, as you've seen Egypt today, you'll never see them again. Thirdly, Hashem will fight for you. And fourthly, be silent. And the Midrash says, the Mechilta, which is the Midrash, says that each of these statements from Moshe Rabbeinu actually came in response to 4 different statements from the Jewish people. And we can align the verses. When we look at the verses, it's there, 14, 15, more or less, chapter 14, verse 15. The one faction had said, Nipol Layam, let us cast ourselves into the sea. So to them, Moshe Rabbeinu said, no cast into the sea. We're not committing suicide now. Stand by and see the salvation of Hashem. Stand firm. A second group said, let's go back to Egypt. There the response was, the way you see Egypt today, you'll never see them again. There is no Egypt like you know it. Egypt is gone. There's no point of return. You cannot even think of Egypt anymore. Then there was the third faction said, we want to fight. And Hashem said, no, God will fight for you. Moshe Rabbeinu tells them this is not the time to fight. And a fourth group said, let us cry to Hashem. And to them, Moshe Rabbeinu said, be silent. So we take 4 different statements and we actually align them with 4 different groups. Have you ever heard of factions amongst the Jewish people? No, we never have factions, right? We only have like 25 political parties in Israel because we can't ever think alike. So what actually happens is we immediately start breaking into factions. But if we look at the factions in life, there are different approaches. The one is to completely give up. Look, jump into the sea. Maybe that's the solution. Another group says, let's give up on the dream. We'll go back to the Egypt of the past. So we had a dream. Let's hang the dream up on the hook and we'll go back to what it was. And then you have those who want to fight. And then you have those who want to pray. And interestingly, Hashem was telling Moshe Rabbeinu to tell the Jewish people, not one of those responses is the call of the hour. Right now, not even prayer, not war, not surrender, not return. Not one of those is relevant right now. Right now, the journey is to go forward, travel forward. You have an objective to achieve. Don't let anything stand in your way right now. That is the journey of the moment. So interesting in life, we have a responsibility to go forward. And nothing should get in our way. In the end of the parsha, we're going to see that there's another war that we had to fight, which was against Amalek. And there we're told to fight them, because they stood between us and our objective. So we had to fight them. The Egyptians are coming from behind. And God was saying, don't get distracted. Don't get confused. Now the call of the hour is to move forward and to travel towards the receiving of the Torah. And that is a general message about all of us in life. There is a time we have to fight, and there is a time for various things. But the main thing is, don't be distracted from your objective. You know what you want to achieve. That has to be the call of the hour. And then you will include moments that you have to include from some of the factions that stood before us. Okay, this is a very key issue that I want to talk about in this portion that talks about the crossing of the sea. Moshe stretches out his hand over the sea and the waters were divided. And the question that I'm asking is, why was there a key element in the liberation from Egypt that we had to go through the crossing of the sea? Why was that? We know that God was intervening and God was saving us from the pursuing Egyptian army, but there could have been a million ways that God could have saved us from the Egyptian army. Why was the liberation from Egypt somehow bound up to an essential ingredient that we had to cross the sea? So let's just spend a few minutes talking about this all-important theme of crossing the sea. Why was that such an important event that formed part of the process of freedom? So the Talmud tells us, Kol ma sheyesh bayavasha yesh bayam. Wherever you have on dry land, you have in the sea. For example, you have currents, you have streams, you have plants, you have trees, you have rock formations, you have gardens. All of these things happen on dry land, and all of these things happen in the sea. But what is the difference? The difference is that you could be standing right on the shore, and you are not aware that just beneath those waves are the dolphins. And a little bit deeper, there might be those whales or those sharks, but you don't see it. It's hidden from the eye. The world that we live in is the world of the obvious, the apparent, the physical world, the world that we can engage with. That is what is immediate to us. The world of the sea is hidden. It's much more complex. It's much more complicated. It's ethereal. It's hidden. We have to do something to be able to see it. So Chassidut, the mystical teachings, speak about the Alma de Iskasya, the worlds that are hidden, that we need to reveal. And symbolic of that is the crossing of the sea. The uncovering of the depths that would normally be concealed suddenly became revealed. And the whole theme is very much associated with the difference in Hebrew between the word that is used for miracle and the word that is used for nature. We know in Hebrew the word for nature is teva. Shmirat HaTeva in Israel means to look after the natural resources. Teva is nature. And a miracle, the Hebrew word is nes. Like we say in Chanukah, she'asa nisim. Nes is a miracle. But Hebrew words connote much, much more than the obvious. And the word teva, which is the word for nature, actually is related to the Hebrew word tavua, which means sunken in, hidden, concealed. And the word nes is related to the word in Hebrew which means a banner, something that is so obvious and apparent, something that is glaring, it stares you in the eye. So what's the difference between miracle and nature? The world of miracles, God is obvious to us. He's there. You see him in a miracle. In the world of the nature, when the sun rises every morning and we have this beautiful new day, it's a natural event. We don't actually even stop to think about it because it's so ingrained in the natural order. That God is sunken in to the natural order. We need to struggle to find him. The world of miracles, God is obvious. It's not that one is more complicated for God than another. Hashem doesn't find it more difficult to do a miracle than to do a natural event. Nothing is complicated for God. The only difference is for us. Is it obvious or is it a journey to discover? And it's a journey to discover God in the natural order and an obvious, apparent God when it comes to miracles. When we stood at the side of the sea, we were actually going through a process that we cannot look at the world and see it only for what is evident to the naked eye and immediate to us. This world has many, many messages, and life has many messages. And when we confront ourselves and the realities and the challenges of life, if we're only going to deal with things with the apparent strength in ourselves, the obvious strengths, the ones we see in the mirror, if that is the extent of our engagement with the world, and we only see the world as it presents itself in the most superficial way, so we will never discover freedom. We're going to be dealing with such an empty veneer and never coming to really understand ourselves and the world around us. The crossing of the sea was a point of no return because God was saying that when we look at the world, uncover the secrets, look deeper at yourself. Don't only see yourself for what you see in the mirror, because just beneath the surface, there are worlds, there are energies, there's ability, there are latent talents, there are strengths that you might never even know that you had and might never reach for, but they are there. Look deeper. Look deeper at the situation that you are confronting, and you will discover hidden things that you might never have noticed. So it was a very symbolic process. God could have built bridges, and God could have had airplanes, and God could have done lots of things to get us across the sea if that was the miracle that was required. We could have simply turned it into ice and we would have walked across or skated across. And we could think of ideas. God said, no, we're going to uncover worlds, and that is going to teach us that the world of freedom is not something that you simply have delivered and then you walk and then you take a step and now I'm free. We've got to free our minds. We've got to free our attitudes. We've got to free our approach. We've got to think differently. We've got to think as free human beings. And in order to do that, we have to uncover the hidden. We have to uncover the hidden elements of self, and we have to uncover the hidden messages that lie within that which we are engaging. That's a challenge for us every single day of our lives. When we look at the realities of today, we keep saying we cannot emerge from 2020 and 2021 merely as survivors and going back to where we were last year, February, before Purim last year. We have to emerge with messages, with deriving strengths and newfound attitudes that are different, that are deeper discoveries of ourselves and deeper discoveries of the world that we're engaging and the people all around us. That is the point of no return. As long as we remain the same human beings and we are geographically 50 kilometers from Egypt, we're not free human beings. It's not about geography, and it's not about physical distance. It's about transformation. It's about thinking different. It's about looking different. It's about discovering a deeper self and a deeper understanding of the world around us. That is the point of no return. An interesting mechilta, it says, Vayaminu ba'Hashem, and they believed, after they saw all these miracles, they believed in God. Uva Moshe Avdo, we say the words in davening every single day, Vayaminu ba'Hashem, Uva Moshe Avdo, and Moshe his servant. And the mechilta, the Medrash says, one who believed in Moses believes in God. So Moshe Rabbeinu became an instrument of instruction and reminder. And we had a belief in Moshe Rabbeinu. We had a belief in his leadership, in him being a prophet, in him being a leader appointed by Hashem. And Moshe Rabbeinu was not, God forbid, any force in his own right and never attempted to be. He was an instrument of Hashem. And the belief in the tzaddikim, in the righteous leaders of our people, is in fact a pathway to belief in God, because they direct our thoughts and our actions to come closer to Hashem. I want to talk about an attitude in time. And if you can bear with me, we're using quite a bit of language today, which might be a bit complicated, but I've tried to color code it. It says, Az Yashir Moshe, then Moses and the children of Israel will sing the song to God. All the commentaries are caught up in the wording. What do you mean then? And why does it say will sing? They sang. They sang the song. So why does it say in the future they will sing? And why does it say the word then, Az Yashir Moshe? And the Midrash says that they sinned with the word Az, then. Where was that? That previously when Moshe Rabbeinu came to God, right at the beginning when he was sent as a messenger to free the Jewish people, he returned to God and he said, May Az Bati El Paro, from then, when I came to Paro, Heira la'amazeh, things have only gotten worse. You sent me to be the mission and the messenger of salvation. And may Az Bati El Paro, from then when I came to Paro, things have gotten worse, says Moshe to Hashem. He challenged Hashem. How can you send me to redeem and to free the Jewish people? And from then when I came, it's actually gotten worse. That's when the word Az was used in a challenge and in a negative way. And when was that rectified? In the word Az used when they sang the song of the crossing of the sea. So one of the commentaries explains, it can't just be the word as. They use the word then, and there they use the word then. The word then means a time other than the immediate moment. And there is a fixing of a problem. The problem right at the beginning was short-sightedness. God said, I'm going to free the Jewish people. And the first steps towards that freedom intensified the servitude. We were trapped in our own short-sightedness. Even Moshe Rabbeinu did not see that beyond those immediate moments, there was going to be the salvation that God promised. So he was trapped in not being able to see a picture bigger than the immediate moment. How does that get fixed? That gets fixed when we experience a precious redemption moment. Then we see not only the immediate moment, but we see what lies beyond. As the commentaries explain, why does it say we will sing? Because this is the song of optimism, and we sing it every single day. We recite it in our prayers. Because we're not only singing, they didn't sing in the past tense because of what happened to them. Their attitude changed. It was a point of no return. They developed into human beings that would sing. They became singing human beings. They viewed the future with optimism. They knew that they sang then because what they saw, but that transformed them to sing about the future redemptions as well, and the future positive elements. How do you fix short-sightedness? It's to have the opposite, to have an ability to see horizons beyond the immediate moment, the as, the then, that was confined to the past. Look how things have gotten worse since then, since I came before Paro. Was rectified when we stood at the crossing of the sea. And not only did we sing for what we saw, we were ready to transform ourselves to be human beings that would sing for the future as well. Now, this is a very important instruction for all of us, because we can be defined by the moment, and sometimes the moment is overwhelming, and therefore we're ready to give up, and we don't know how we're going to survive. And then we could also be defined by a moment which is exciting and very happy, but it's a moment. The way we rectify short-sightedness is that when we go through an experience of the miracle of the crossing of the sea, we changed to the point that Yashir, we will sing. We will be becoming singing human beings. We will always look at the world with optimism. We're never going to look at the constant, with eyes that constantly see the problem. We're going to be looking for the solution. That is transformational. And that's what happened then. The word Oz was used when we couldn't see beyond our own noses, and then it was rectified when we looked to the future with the optimism and the strength that we found in that moment. But we looked beyond that. We were able to translate that immediate moment into an attitude and how we would look at the future as well. And that is our Jewish optimistic spirit. You know, even the Pesach Seder, we always end off Lashon Haba B'Yerushalayim, because that's us. We have problems, we have difficulties, we've got to deal with them, but we always look forward with optimism. That's definitive. There's an interesting midrash that says, "This is my God, and I will glorify him." This part of the words of the song that we sang to thank Hashem for delivering us. This is my God, and I will glorify him. Now the Gemara always says, whenever it says zeh, this, it's very demonstrative. It means that it's immediate, it's visual, it's something that is actually so immediate that you can point with your finger. God was so immediate to us when we saw him unleashing his energy and his strength to save us and to destroy the Egyptian army, that this is my God. God became so immediate to us that the Mechilta, the Midrash says, Shivcha al hayam, ra'aso mashaloi ro'u gedolim shebenavim. One of the versions is Yecheskel. A maidservant of the crossing of the sea saw what even the greatest prophets in subsequent generations didn't see. Prophets saw lots of things, but at the crossing of the sea, even a simple maidservant saw what the greatest prophets didn't see. Zekeli, this is my God. That is how immediate God was to the Jewish people. My teacher in yeshiva, whom I often refer to, Reb Mendel Futterfass, I've discussed him many times. He was a larger-than-life personality in my life. I arrived in yeshiva when I was 16 years old. I told you I finished school a year early because I so desired to leave school. I didn't like school, and I wanted to get away from school as soon as possible. And I always say God has a sense of humor. He then gave me a life sentence to spend the rest of my life running a school. You can't really escape yourselves. Hashem has a way of reining you in. But at the time, I arrived in Kfar Chabad, and this Rabbi, Reb Mendel Futterfass, he enthralled me. He just captured my thoughts and my excitement and my passion. He was an elderly Chassid who had spent 13 years in Siberia for the terrible sin of trying to save Jews out of Russia. He was on a train with his wife to leave Russia eventually, met a Jew, gave his own passport away and said to his wife, "I'll see you next week," which was 13 years later. He was in the Gulag. He remained such a passionate, happy, rejoicing Jew that he just ignited an energy in me. I often quote him because he had many life aphorisms and messages, and one of them he said, "There's something that is very limiting in the word inspiration. We all want inspiration, right? But there is something that is limiting in inspiration. If we live our lives saying, I want to be inspired, the inspiration comes and we're getting on a high, and the next morning, it's gone. So we were inspired. What do we do with an inspiration is more important than the inspiration itself. We've got to be careful not to be looking to have some ignition, ignite us for the moment, and then we fire it up for the moment, and then the flames just recede. And he said, look at the wording. It says, Shifcha alayam rasa, the maidservant, a simple girl, at the crossing of the sea saw what the greatest prophets in future generations would see. But he said the tragedy was that she's still referred to as a maidservant, not as a prophet. The prophets saw far less than she saw. But they became people of vision that plotted the course of the future of the Jewish people. And the maidservant remained the maidservant. Till today, we refer to her as a simple young maidservant who saw great things, but never changed. So I don't know if that's being judgmental about the people at the time, or just a life message. He is to say, don't think that life changes because something comes your way that gives you great inspiration, or you're waiting for the day that that'll happen. And when it does happen, don't ride the wave without then following up, translating it into action, into decisions, into formulating a new approach to the way you're dealing with things. Inspiration, you go to a great class and you hear an unbelievable shir or some motivational speaker speaks, and we're walking on clouds. And then we go to sleep and wake up the next morning, and yeah, last night I was inspired. How does it translate into my life? It might not. And that's a tragedy, because that kind of inspiration should be transformative. So the message he is to say is, don't let us ever be this person at the sea, seeing incredible events, more than the greatest prophets. And then what happens is we remain the same. Nothing really changes. That's not the inspiration we're talking about. I've mentioned before that one of the 4th of July, I was in America, and we went to see the fireworks. There was a display of fireworks. I think they shot up about $3 million worth of fireworks on a barge on the East River between Brooklyn and Manhattan. I think it was Macy's at the time that had the barge, and hundreds and thousands of people went into all the different places you could probably get a view on from Brooklyn and from Manhattan. And we were in this cul-de-sac leading up to the BQE, which runs along the edge of Brooklyn, and looking across into the river and watching the fireworks. And it was inspirational. People were going, they were losing their breath. That is how brilliant and exciting, and it was incredible just to see. It was a fantasy. And then, 3/4 of an hour later, it was over. And everyone started walking back up the hill to their cars. And I just remember that feeling of emptiness. There was this amazing, amazing event. And then everyone like just went, okay, there was $3 million, and that was like 40 minutes, and it was the most exciting minutes, but nothing changed in anybody's life. It was like such a deflating feeling of, so we saw, and it was exciting, and then it was gone. And Judaism is saying we do need high moments. We need inspirations. We need the Simchas Torahs where we're dancing, and the Purims where we're reveling in the joy, and the Pesach moments. And we need the moments of inspiration. But they're always cyclic. They're always saying, take it and translate it in tomorrow. Shabbos, we aim at the whole week, but when Shabbos comes, it has to churn over and translate into a better Sunday and a better Monday that lies beyond. Inspiration isn't here to come and go and to make us feel good for the moment. It's developmental. It's transformational. We have to translate what has happened in the crossing of the sea into a better living the next day. That is how we view great events in our lives. I want to talk about Miriam and the role that woman played at most of these junctures. We already said that Aaron and the Moshe Rabbeinu, the Jewish people, they went out and they sang. But then, Vatikach Miriam HaNevi'ah, Miriam the prophetess, Achos Aaron, the sister of Aaron, commentaries explain why it says that over here. But Tupim Uvimchalot, she went out with tambourines in her hand, and all the women went out with her with tambourines and with dances. There was a totally different level of joy expressed by the woman. And again, in all of these critical moments at Sinai, who did Hashem speak to first? The woman. Who had the emunah in Egypt and did not become overwhelmed by the servitude? It was the woman that said to their husbands, don't give up. Let us continue living lives and bringing children into the world in spite of all the problems we're going through. And at the crossing of the sea, while the men sang, the women were dancing with tambourines. They took it to a different level. And it became a conscience and a direction, a lifting of the entire people. And it expresses biblical woman, but very often the ability of woman to lift the environment and to express deep found belief and expression of that belief in a totally different level. And the commentaries say the women, in a sense, suffered much more than the men in Egypt. When they had their children taken away from them and cast into the river, these are the children that they bore, that they carried through pregnancies. The women, in a sense, suffered more than the men. And their rejoicing was even greater than that of the men. We just see that it was a much deeper, much more expressed joy that the woman led and eventually impacted on the men as well. Again and again, at all of these critical moments, the power of the woman was transformational for our people Israel. Okay, I don't know how much more time I have, and let me leave it with this final message, which is one of these life-changing messages for me, and hope it can be for you too. Immediately after the crossing of the sea, we're on a high, we're dancing, we're singing, we're recognizing Hashem. All of the miracles, everything changed, the point of no return. Brilliant. 3 days journey, we come to a place, Vayavoy Marasa. We came to a place called Mara, which comes from the Hebrew word mar, which means bitter. V'lo yachlu lishtot mayim, and we couldn't drink the waters, ki marim heim, because the waters were very bitter. Al kain kara shama Mara. That's why they call the whole city was named Mara. So the translation of that verse is, they came to a place, they couldn't drink the waters because they were bitter. What is the they? What was bitter? They couldn't drink the waters because the waters were bitter. That's the simple meaning of the verse. Says the Baal Shem Tov, according to the teachings of Hasidus. But it means much more than that. They couldn't drink the waters because they were bitter. They couldn't drink the waters because they were bitter. There was a projection of a bitterness of self that becomes pervasive. When we are bitter inside of ourselves, the water tastes bitter. And before we know it, the place we live in is named Mara, bitterness. And the projection of our own negativity evolves into a bitterness of life, a bitterness of the environment. Everything in life tastes bitter because of the attitude that we have is bitter. We've mentioned many times the guy went to the doctor and he said, "Doctor, I don't understand. When I touch here, I touch my head, it hurts. When I touch my chest, it hurts. When I touch my leg, it hurts. When I touch my foot, it hurts. When I touch my leg, it hurts. Wherever I touch, it hurts." And the doctor says, the diagnosis for your ailment is you have a broken finger. Wherever you're going to touch, it's going to hurt. But the problem doesn't have to be addressed in all the regions that you're touching. Look at how you're touching. Look at your finger. You know, when a person looks with purple colored glasses and everything looks purple and spends his life trying to use clean green or Ajax to clean the world up, the problem is not that the world is purple. The problem is that you have purple glasses on. Change your perspective. The Baal Shem Tov is saying something so profound. We went through the high, went through the crossing of the sea. It was amazing. Egypt was over. We're now transformed. But human nature is still open to different possibilities. And we arrived and there wasn't water. And there were different choices that we could have made. We could have been happy individuals looking for water, or we could wallow in victimhood and in sadness and in bitterness. And when we become bitter human beings, we look at each other and we see that everyone around us, not so nice. The world is not so nice. The world becomes a reflection of our own attitude. And the challenge is that we have to not just fix the whole world around us, maybe we have to fix something much, much closer to home, which is in our ability to change. We can't always change the whole world, but we can certainly change the way we look at it. And the way we look is often with such a strain and a stress and a negativity that we translate everything around us into bitterness. It says the Baal Shem Tov, Ayavu Marasa. They came to a place called Mara. They couldn't drink the waters. Because they were bitter. They, the people, were bitter. They called the whole city bitterness. We can call the whole world bitter because it's a shadow of our own negative perspective. Or we can look with positive eyes, with the eyes that look with joy and with happiness and find that inner reserve of strength. And it's amazing, we could look at the same world the next morning when we wake up refreshed after we've said Modehani, and we can confront the same problems with a totally different attitude, with a winning streak, because we're not looking with a drained, bent over the problems of life attitude. And I'll leave everyone with one final thought, because as Alan said, tonight is Rosh Hashanah. It is the Rosh Hashanah for trees, Tu B'Shvat, the 15th day of Shvat. And what is important is that we look at trees and we see the rejoicing that relates to ourselves as well. Adam Eitz HaSadeh, because man is like the tree of the field, although that's asked as a question, it's a rhetorical question, but we actually learn it as a message. We are like a tree, and a tree has roots, and a tree has a trunk with the rings of the passage of life. Each year is another ring that forms in the trunk. And then we have the arms that go forward, which carry the leaves and the seeds and the fruits of tomorrow. We all have that. We have a past, we have our roots. We have, I see Addie's over here and she's remembering the yahrzeit of the night. We have a connection to our past. We have our present, each day of our lives growing and developing. And then we have our dreams, which is the fruits of tomorrow. And the very strong advantage of a tree, which is unique, the oldest living beings in the world are trees. I visited the Sequoia National Forest in California, and there are trees there that are 2,500 years old. They've measured them because of the rings of their trunks. One of them was taken down, and they could actually date them by the rings of the seasons that those trees have been through, which means that at the time of the Beit HaMikdash, the temple 2,000 years ago, those trees were already growing. I stood in awe in front of those trees. What is the longevity of a tree? Longevity of a tree is that it's rooted to the ground. Every creature could be independent, it runs around, but it can never live as long as a tree, because a tree is rooted. It connects to its source of nourishment and it holds on tight. And we as a people, if we hold on to our roots, onto our background, to where we come from, that gives us the longevity as a people. We are like those trees, growing so tall and so proud and so strong because we are connected to our roots and because we have a dream of producing the fruits of tomorrow, the roots and the fruits. And may Hashem turn this Rosh Hashanah for trees as being another added strength for our people Israel. May tomorrow be confronted with optimism and with hope. May we look at the problems and the challenges of today, not impervious, not unaware, aware of the challenges, but looking past them and seeing that we will sing, and we will sing yet again, and we'll cross through, and we'll uncover worlds in ourselves and in the world around us, and we'll confront the future with optimism. Thank you so much for joining, and please God, we'll see each other again next week.
Amen. Shkach, thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thanks.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you. Okay, that's it.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yes, thank you for joining.
Thank you, Rabbi from the burgers. Thank you, Rabbi.
Yeah.
Have a good week.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Lawrence, Max, thank you. God bless. Gary, thank you. Helen,
Thank you, Rabbi.
God bless.